back with our Vodcast 10 Learning Unit 4, and we are moving toward somebody that I quite like. Goffman actually proposed that you should approach political image management like you would approach a theater production. Everything that you see in the theater, you will see in the political sphere as well. There's a front stage and a backstage. Obviously, the backstage, you don't really want to show your voters. Also, the cast of the theater production is trying to make an impression on the audience. And that's exactly what Goffman says you need to do in political communication as well. Beyond the front and the backstage, the actors also have props, and they have costumes, and they use words and gestures in order to make this impression. And Goffman says, as a proper political image manager, you have these things always at the forefront of your mind. You are constantly thinking about how you can manipulate props, for example. Just think of the party political rallies where the parties are handing out flags and t-shirts, and they have balloons, and they have a little bit of an entertainment program that is going on as well. So you can see what works for the theater also works for the political sphere. Particularly important, Goffman says, is of course your delivery, your words that you're using, the language that you're using. And the gestures or your nonverbal communication should definitely also be considered. The most important thing is control. Your theater play needs to be rehearsed so that everybody knows when what to do. And there's no one dancing out of line, and there's no one who forgets their lines. So it needs to be a concerted effort by everybody in the cast / everybody in the political party to manage the image. What do you have to do in order to manage? Firstly, you got to do your research. You need to know your audience. Obviously, theater plays, they cater toward a particular audience, and the audience usually decides what they want to see. With a party political communication, it is slightly different in that you can still appeal to audiences that you might have not gotten in the past. But yes, you have to do your research about them. Find out as much as you can about them, and based on the criteria that you have found out, put together a play or put together communication that actually appeals. Once you have this idea of what to do, please make sure that you're controlling the situation as much as you can. You have the information, you're making up a campaign, you are deciding how to communicate, when to communicate, who needs to communicate. So stick to that plan. Control the situation. The most important part of Goffman's extended metaphor are the two different measures taken in order for you to properly manage your image. They are the defensive measures and the protective measures, and they're actually quite easy to understand. Let's have a look at the defensive measures first. You can see here that he is throwing around some real tricky terms with the dramaturgical loyalty, dramaturgical discipline, and dramaturgical circumspection. My, he really thought about those long and hard, didn't he? But it's actually really easy to understand what he means. So dramaturgical loyalty, you know what loyalty is. You do not want to let your team down. You want to make sure that you're acting as a cast in a theater and that you're acting as a team in the political sphere as well. We see in South Africa that this is not always the case. There hasn't been a lot of dramaturgical loyalty. Just think of COPE and the ANC. Just think of the EFF and the ANC. I mean, these are all splinter parties that have formed based on animosities and based on fighting within the ANC. So Goffman says, best case scenario, there is such a thing as loyalty. And how do you prove your loyalty? By keeping each other's secrets. And he says there are two different types of secrets to keep. The strategic secrets and the dark secrets. I don't really like the fact that he says keep the dark secrets. It kind of is a sign of a very male world that he says, oh no, if there is some unfavorable factual information that will disrupt the impression of voters to do with your party political members, better keep it to yourself. I mean, I don't want to be horrible now, but it sounds like he is okay with you covering up for a colleague who, for example, did something immoral or did something criminal. If there is a corruption case, for example, in your party, he says you better keep that secret because it will hurt your image after all. So I'm not really with him on the dark secret side, but I am with him on the strategic secret side. As a team, you obviously have a strategy in place. You have a plan, and you don't want to communicate that plan with anybody else. You want to keep it a secret so that you can use it as a competitive advantage. So, how do you prove your loyalty? By keeping secrets. Dramaturgical discipline basically just says you have to remember your part. As a cast member of an ensemble, you also need to learn your lines. You need to know where to come in and when. You need to know how to actually support the other people within your play. And that is what they call discipline. Know your part and play it. Don't stuff up. Dramaturgical circumspection is the last defensive measure to save your image. And basically he says it's the prudent use of factual information about the voters. The performer can determine in advance how to stage the show. Because you have found out about your voters, you will come up with a plan of how to best appeal to them. And that plan needs to be a clever plan. That plan needs to be creative. That plan needs to hit home. That is what he's saying under dramaturgical circumspection. Now, the protective measures are slightly different because Goffman says at some stage you have to give it up to the audience. And he wants the audience to take protective measures for you. In different words, he says that an audience that is sold on your play or sold on your political strategy and your political communication will protect you in front of others. If you want your audience to protect you, you got to play into their hands. So if they give you certain hints or certain clues, you got to pick them up. If an audience member feels heard, they are more likely to defend you in other situations. Also, as a politician, you have to entertain your audience. If your audience is indifferent toward you, or if you can't rouse the audience, how are they going to protect you at any stage in the future? It's not going to happen. Goffman also says that once you have the audience on your side, they might even protect you in front of journalists and media workers. And you know that media workers give us a lot of coverage in the political sphere. Please just keep in mind, Goffman was putting together an idea, and I actually think it's always nice to illustrate something in the world by referring to something else in the world. An analogy is always a good way to understand what is actually going on. But in terms of an image management program, of course, you still need to understand the tactics and the means and what you should do. But in terms of an overall idea, I think Goffman really succeeds in representing the kind of pillars of image management and what you can and what you can't do and what you should look at and what you shouldn't look at. I hope you found this useful. See you for the next one.